I gave everyone the best of me, and I left nothing for myself. For years, I did not think of that as a tragedy. I thought of it as love. I thought of it as maturity. I thought of it as being a good wife, a good mother, a good daughter, a good friend, a good woman. I thought the tiredness I carried was proof that I was doing life the right way. Everyone needed something from me, and I became the kind of person who almost never said no. I gave my time, my patience, my energy, my attention, my care, my softness, my understanding, my problem-solving, my emotional labor. I gave and gave until giving became my identity. And because people praised me for being dependable, strong, selfless, and always there, I mistook my depletion for virtue. What I did not understand until much later is that a life built entirely around being available to everyone else can slowly erase the person living it. That erasure is not dramatic in the beginning. It does not announce itself like a breakdown. It happens quietly. You become known as the one who handles things, the one who remembers, the one who checks in, the one who adjusts, the one who notices, the one who smooths things over, the one who doesn't make it about herself. At first, that feels good. It gives you purpose. It gives you importance. It gives you a role that other people appreciate. There is a kind of emotional reward in being needed. People rely on you. They trust you. They call you first. They expect you to hold more than they hold. And when a woman is raised to believe that being good means being giving, that role can feel almost sacred. That was my life for a long time. I was the one who kept things moving. I remembered birthdays. I handled logistics. I anticipated needs before they were spoken. I absorbed moods. I sensed when someone was upset before they said a word. I learned how to soften a room, how to rescue a conversation, how to make other people comfortable, how to keep the emotional machine of life running. I became very good at it. So good that almost no one stopped to ask whether I was tired. And if they did, I often said I was fine. Not because I was fine, but because I no longer knew how to answer that question honestly. That is one of the strangest things about a life of constant giving. Eventually, you lose touch with your own condition. You get so used to tracking everyone else that you stop checking in with yourself. You know who is overwhelmed, who is sensitive, who needs space, who needs encouragement, who needs help, who needs patience. But if someone asks you what you need, your mind goes blank for a moment. Not because you need nothing, but because your needs have been living unattended for so long that they no longer know how to speak clearly. I think a lot of women live like this. They become experts in everyone else's emotional world and strangers to their own. They know how to care, but they do not know how to receive care without guilt. They know how to show up, but they do not know how to leave space for themselves without feeling selfish. They know how to carry, but they do not know how to set anything down. And because the world often rewards women for self-erasure in polite ways, it can take years to realize that what looks like love from the outside may be costing something vital on the inside. For me, it started early. I learned to be good by being easy, helpful, pleasant, responsible. I learned that the more emotionally manageable I was, the more smoothly life moved around me. I learned that if I could anticipate needs and meet them before conflict appeared, I could keep peace. I learned that my own disappointment could wait. My own exhaustion could wait. My own desires could wait. My own voice could wait. There was always someone who needed something more urgent than whatever was quietly happening inside me. And because I was capable of caring a lot, people let me. In fact, they came to expect it. That expectation changes a person over time. You start thinking of your own needs as disruptions. You become uncomfortable with your own limits. Rest begins to feel undeserved unless everything for everyone else is already handled. You struggle to enjoy anything fully because some part of you is still scanning the room, still remembering the errand, still anticipating the next need, still carrying invisible lists in your head. You are never fully where you are because you are mentally spread across the people who depend on you. And if you live like that long enough, your inner life becomes a room you only enter in passing. I used to believe that one day things would ease up and I would finally return to myself. That is the lie many women live inside, once the kids are older. Once this stressful season passes, once work is calmer, once the house is more stable, once everyone is okay, then I'll rest. Then I'll think about what I want. Then I'll get serious about my health. Then I'll take the trip. Then I'll start that thing I always wanted to do. Then I'll read, write, sit, breathe, become. But there is always another season, another need, another person to care for, another fire to quietly put out before it becomes visible to everyone else. If you do not claim space for yourself intentionally, life will happily spend all of you. That is what happened to me. I did not wake up one day and decide to abandon myself. I abandoned myself in small, socially approved pieces. I said yes when I wanted to say not now. I gave energy I did not really have because I did not want someone to feel unsupported. I made myself emotionally available even when I was depleted. I smiled through exhaustion. I kept helping long after I had crossed the line from loving generosity into self-neglect. And because I looked functional, and because much of what I did was genuinely useful, no one sounded an alarm. Why would they? The machine was still running. It just happened to be running on parts of me I was not replacing. The hardest truth is that some of the people you pour yourself into will gladly accept your best without ever wondering what it is costing you. Not because they are monsters, sometimes simply because they are used to you, used to your steadiness, used to your availability, used to you being the one who remembers, notices, adjusts, comforts, handles, smooths, carries. When you become that consistent for long enough, people stop experiencing your effort as effort. They experience it as personality. They say, "That's just how she is. She's strong. She's nurturing. She's always there. She's amazing." But being admired for endurance is not the same as being protected from depletion. There were years when I was so busy keeping everyone else emotionally resourced that I became emotionally undernourished without fully realizing it. I was kind, but brittle, loving, but tired, present, but not always alive inside my own presence. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep does not fix, a soul-level thinning that happens when you keep spending energy without being restored in any meaningful way. I carried that for longer than I knew, and because it did not look dramatic, because I still functioned, still smiled, still managed the house, the relationships, the obligations, I kept calling it normal. I remember periods when I would sit down at the end of the day and feel not simply tired, but emptied, and not the good kind of emptied, not the feeling of having poured into something meaningful and feeling fulfilled by it. This was different. This was the sensation that too much of me had been used without enough of me being returned. I had listened, responded, solved, planned, soothed, remembered, prepared, adjusted, and then in the quiet, when no one needed anything for a few minutes, I would feel an ache I did not know how to name. It was not only fatigue, it was absence. The absence of myself inside a life where I was everywhere for everyone else. There were things I wanted. That is what makes it sadder. I did have wants, interests, dreams, preferences, places I wanted to go, things I wanted to learn, ways I wanted to grow. But those desires started feeling selfish next to the visible needs of the people around me. My own life kept shrinking into the margins because everyone else's urgency looked more legitimate than my own longing. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself later would come. But later is cruel to women who keep giving themselves away in quiet installments. Later comes yes, but often after years have already shaped a life where self-abandonment feels normal. I also think many women confuse being loved with being useful. I did. If I was helping, I felt valuable. If I was needed, I felt secure. If I could solve, comfort, support, manage, anticipate, then I felt anchored in my place. That creates a dangerous pattern, because once your sense of worth becomes attached to how much of yourself you can give away, you begin fearing your own boundaries. You begin worrying that if you stop doing so much, people will be disappointed, inconvenienced, confused, even distant. So instead of asking, "What do I need?" you ask, "What will keep everyone okay with me?" And that question can govern an entire life. The tragedy is that being constantly needed can hide the fact that you are also quietly disappearing. From the outside, your life may look full, rich in relationships, important, meaningful, but fullness is not the same as wholeness. A woman can be surrounded by people and still feel internally abandoned. She can be deeply loved in some ways and still be unseen in others. She can do everything right and still feel a private grief over the self she kept postponing. I felt that grief in moments I could not explain to anyone. Sometimes it came while doing something ordinary, washing dishes, folding laundry, driving home, standing in the kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed. It would come as a question more than a conclusion. Where am I in all of this? Not in a dramatic identity crisis way, in a quieter, sadder way. Where is the version of me that once had more room inside her own life? Where is the woman who did not always calculate herself against everyone else's needs? Where is the person who had interests not always measured by usefulness? It is painful when you realize that no one explicitly stole that from you. You participated in the loss. That is what makes it hard. I said yes. I minimized my exhaustion. I over-explained my boundaries. I kept giving after resentment had already begun whispering to me that something was wrong. I smiled through depletion and called it love. I stayed quiet when I needed to be honest. I made care for others automatic and care for myself conditional. And because I was praised for it, I kept going. That praise can be one of the most dangerous parts. You're so strong. You always hold everything together. I don't know what we'd do without you. Those words feel warm, and sometimes they are genuine, but they can also become a cage if you do not know how to hear them without turning them into responsibility. The moment your identity fuses too tightly with being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who doesn't fall apart, you begin hiding your own needs to protect the role. You become loyal to the image people have of you, even when maintaining that image is hurting you. I remember times when I wanted help and could not even ask for it cleanly. I would hint, suggest, hope someone noticed, then feel disappointed when they did not. But part of the problem was that I had taught people to expect me at full capacity. I had spent years downplaying strain, years saying it's fine when it wasn't, years stepping in before anyone else had the chance to fully register what needed doing. So when I finally needed more, I was speaking from inside patterns I had helped build. That is not blame. It is clarity. If you train the world to experience your overfunctioning as normal, do not be surprised when your collapse shocks them. There came a point when I started noticing resentment growing where simple tiredness used to be. That frightened me, because resentment is often grief wearing armor. It shows up when a person has been crossing their own limits for too long. I would feel irritated by small requests, not because the requests were unreasonable, but because some part of me knew I had stopped giving from love and started giving from compulsion. That is a dangerous place. Once care becomes compulsion, kindness loses its softness. It starts carrying pressure, martyrdom, silent anger, and homes can feel that, even if no one names it. That was when I realized I had to tell the truth. Not only to other people, but to myself. I had to admit that I was not simply loving well. I was disappearing well. I was not simply serving. I was self-neglecting in a form that looked admirable. I was not simply tired because life was hard. I was tired because I had built a way of living that left me permanently last. That truth did not make me selfish. It made me honest. And honesty is what finally allowed me to begin changing. Slowly, uncomfortably, imperfectly. I began noticing how often guilt tried to rise the moment I made room for myself. How strange rest felt when I had not earned it through complete depletion. How difficult it was to let something remain undone if doing it would cost too much of my peace that day. How unfamiliar it felt to ask, "What do I want?" and not immediately soften the answer to make it more acceptable. These things sound small, but they are not. For a woman who has spent years living through service, reclaiming selfhood feels almost rebellious. I wish I had learned earlier that caring for yourself is not betrayal. It is stewardship. I wish I had learned that not every act of sacrifice is holy. Some sacrifices are simply habits of self-erasure. I wish I had understood that people can love you and still benefit from your lack of boundaries. I wish I had realized that if I did not deliberately preserve some part of myself, life would happily spend every available part of me until there was almost nothing left that felt freely chosen. If I could speak to my younger self, I would tell her that being needed is not the same as being cherished. I would tell her that just because you can carry more does not mean you should. I would tell her that the people who truly love you must learn to know you as a whole person, not only as a source of comfort, help, and emotional labor. I would tell her to stop waiting for permission to have needs, to stop presenting herself as endlessly capable, to stop apologizing for limits, to stop believing that the highest form of womanhood is self-denial with a smile. I would tell her to keep loving, yes, to stay generous, yes, to remain kind, yes, but to do those things from wholeness, not depletion, from choice, not compulsion, from grounded self-respect, not from fear that saying no would make her less lovable. I would tell her that the best of her should not only belong to other people. Some of it must remain with her if she wants to stay alive inside her own life. Because that is the truth I learned too late. You can give everyone the best of you for years and still lose something essential if you never offer any of that care to yourself. You can become beloved for your usefulness and still feel privately unseen. You can build a life that looks devoted and still feel a quiet sorrow over how absent you have been from your own becoming. I gave everyone the best of me, and I left nothing for myself. That sentence hurts because it tells the truth about years I cannot recover. But maybe it can still serve a purpose if someone hearing it recognizes herself sooner than I did. So, if that is you, if you are always the one who remembers, handles, notices, comforts, adapts, and carries, stop for a moment and ask yourself a question that might change your life. What part of me have I been asking to survive on leftovers? Do not wait 20 more years to answer it.